What's going on, friends? The longer you own a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, the more items you find out that are actually wear items, but they're listed nowhere in the service manual or anywhere else to actually check these items. It's only when you have a failure or you go to do some upgrades or you need a rebuild do you actually find out that certain items within the engine are actually wear items. And one of those wear items is actually your factory cam plate. Now, starting in 2007, when Harley-Davidson went to the updated oil system, doing away with the spring tensioners, actually about 2006 for the Dyna only, when we went to these new hydraulic tensioners, they also updated the cam plate as well. Now, whether you want to call it an update or not, that is debatable, depending on whether you like the old style or the new style of cam plate from the factory. Guys, before we get too far into today's video, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Now, starting in 1999, when Harley-Davidson actually went to an internal oil pump on the Twin Cam 88, we had the dual cams inside the cam chest. Now with the oil pump, they actually had to have a cam support plate. They no longer used the outside cover for support. It's now all supported by that cam plate. Now, on the 88s, these differ from the newer bikes. These actually had outboard cam bearings. Now, while they still had the inboard side up in the cases for the cams, the 88s had that outboard, which they had cam bearings in the cam plate, which you could change out if they wore out. Now, there was really two sides to this. One, these cam plates were actually serviceable, which was really kind of nice. Now, for the 88, they ran these bearings all the way up until the end of the 88 in 2006. Now, of course, with the 2006 Dyna, you had the newer style, which became pretty much standard in 2007. Well, I say pretty much, it was standard. Now, 2007, with the cam plate, they eliminated the actual outboard bearings, and they just basically went with some bushings. So now the cams don't ride in a bearing, they ride in a bushing. And that bushing on those stock cams plates, that is not serviceable. Basically, you get so many miles on them, they tend to start egg shaping, rounding out, whatever you want to call it. If you have an issue with the engine, you can actually destroy your cam plate as well as your cams and just about everything else rotating in there. That's why when anybody wants to do a cam swap, I always say that, well, changing the cam plate isn't 100% necessary, but it's definitely not a bad idea, depending on how many miles you have on it. Now, with the stock valve springs and a higher lift cam, yeah, you might be putting a little bit more strain on that stock cam plate, but you're not actually really doing a whole lot of extra duty with it. Like if you put some heavier valve springs in it, yeah, technically you probably will be wearing that cam plate out a lot faster. So the bad part is with an aging cam plate is there's really no way to tell without tearing it all completely down and actually taking a good look at it and really thoroughly inspecting it. But generally, if you have any issues with your cams or lifters, pretty much any problems with the valve train, it's a good idea to go ahead and inspect every piece of that. Because chances are, if it's got one part of the valve train, if you ate a lifter, it's probably damaged the cam lobe, and in turn, it could have possibly damaged the cam plate. Now, on the 88s, you would always change the inboard cam bearings in the case, then you'd always change out the outboard side on the cam plate. Now, as I mentioned, 2007 and newer, you don't have that option. But 2007 and newer, with the bushings, those cam plates that didn't have the bearings, these are supposed to be a lot stouter than the older style cam plates with the bearings in them. Because sometimes on the 88s, you'd always hear stories of basically eating an outboard cam bearing and basically causing catastrophic engine failure. So the 2007 and laters are actually supposed to be stronger. But a lot of two schools of thought there depending on which one you prefer. Do you prefer strength or do you prefer serviceability? Now, if you're doing some part swaps, if you're doing a cam change or anything like that on a bike that's got a lot of miles on it, or you're going in and actually doing some repair after some kind of failure, generally you're going to be pretty much rebuilding the whole cam chest anyhow. Now, Harley-Davidson does sell the factory cam plates, and even the factory cam plates, you know, they are cast. They're not basically machined out of a solid block of aluminum. Being cast, they do have the porosity issue, and they're just generally not as strong as a piece that's cut from a solid chunk of aluminum. But if you decide to replace your worn out cam plate and go back with a factory cam plate, you can buy these, and I did just check the OEM price, and they're roughly about $250 if you have an 07 or newer. Now if you have an 88, they are no longer selling the old cam plate with the bearings in it. You have to convert it to the new style with the bushings and the hydraulic tensioners and the updated oil pump. Now the problem with that is from the OEM, you're looking at about $550, $600. Definitely not worth it, in my opinion, to go back OEM. At that point, either way, you might as well go ahead and get a fueling OE cam plate, or go ahead and upgrade to a race plate and a good, high quality, high volume oil pump. You will not regret it. Now, one of the huge benefits of going with the aftermarket cam plates, number one, obviously, is strength. You cannot beat these that are machined out of a solid chunk of aluminum versus being cast. They don't have the little air pockets and the porosity issues that basically show up under X-ray. They're also a hell of a lot stronger than the original stock piece. Yes, they are a pretty good chunk of change and a pretty good investment, but these things can actually last you a lifetime because a lot of them, they are fully serviceable. Most of your aftermarket cam plates, these are completely serviceable. And by serviceable, I mean you can change the bushings out in them. You can actually, with S&S, you can actually adjust the oil pressure. These things are rebuildable and serviceable almost infinitely. And this saves you a lot of money over constantly replacing your cam plate. Now, is everybody going to wear out a cam plate in their lifetime? Generally, most riders are not going to ever wear out a cam plate. That's going to be a lifetime for them. But if you buy a used motorcycle that's got some significant mileage on it, and you want to change out a cam, you're going to be doing lifters, everything else, but you've got to remember that cam plate. They do wear out. Factory cam plates, those bushings, as I mentioned, these things wear out and they go away just like anything else. You're not going to find anything in any manual that says, hey, you need to take a look at this. You basically only find this out when you have a major issue. And when you have a major issue, generally by that point, you're kind of riding that tightrope of catastrophic engine failure. So yes, if you go to a shop and you want to have a cam swapped out and they tell you, hey, your cam plate's wore out, yes, it's a thing. Yes, it does happen. No, you're not going to find it in a service manual anywhere, but it is a wear item. It is a part that does have to be changed after a significant amount of miles. So no, they're not lying to you. They're not crazy. They really are telling you the truth. If your cam plate is possibly wore out with a certain amount of high mileage or hard miles on the bike. But guys, let me know in the comments what you prefer. Do you guys prefer the old style that actually had the outboard bearings in the cam plate? Or do you like the new style with the bushings in it? And especially if you've got an aftermarket, you can actually replace the bushings. Let me know in the comments which one you guys prefer. But yeah, guys, that's all I've got for you this week. If you guys enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. But until next week, guys, you stay safe on the streets, ride smart, dodge those cars, and I'll catch you guys back here next week with a brand new video. Thanks for watching.